Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today is the beginning of the month of October for Kardec Radio. And we are celebrating the 208th anniversary of Kardec. Kardec was born in Paris, France, in the month of October. And we are here to celebrate. Not only that, it's not like a mere celebration. It's about work and service. And we're going to serve our community by dedicating all the shows to reaching out to the Spiritist community, specifically speaking. Many people have been requesting, and we are now going to dedicate the whole month of October to that purpose. And you can participate by calling in at 858-769-4705. This is a toll-free number, so you're not going to pay anything when you call in at 858-769-4705. And what do you get when you call in? Not only you can talk to us, but you can also ask your question, make your comment, and the best of all, win a Kardec Radio stamp. Oh, yes. Kardec Radio now has a stamp. Why? Another way of disseminating to nourish people's souls. It's a much valid stamp with the United States Postal Service, and you can get one for free, and we're going to mail it to you. All you have to do is to call us during the live shows during the month of October, 858-769-4705, and you win a stamp. Of course, people have been asking us, can I buy a whole booklet? Yes, you can. Very soon later this week, we're going to be able to, this weekend, we're going to be able to release the bookstore, the store at Kardec Radio, in which you can buy your whole booklet and use the stamps to share the news that there is a lot of nourishment for people's soul everywhere and elsewhere. By the way, have you taken a look at the Spiritist magazine? Oh, beautiful. Beautiful and also very empowering. It's about troubleshooting the Spiritist Center. The Spiritist magazine is the single periodical to date in the English language sponsored by the International Spiritist Council, and you can access its digital and PDF form for free at thespiritistmagazine.com. It's very simple, and if you want your printout copy, it's easy. All you have to do is go to our website, thespiritistmagazine.com, click on where it says order, and you go to the website of our distributor, which is HP MagCloud. Of course, people have been saying, but Vanessa, it's more expensive than before. Of course, we cannot make miracles, and HP MagCloud has to have their scent on this to help us print it out. It's a partnership. So whatever else is there, it's about this business relationship. All we can tell you is that if you want your printout copy for $10, you can have it. It's historical. And in this very issue, we're going to discuss several of these articles throughout the month of October. It's all about the Spiritist movement, an important alert for Spiritists by the spirit of Dr. Viana de Carvalho through Divaldo Franco. Another beautiful message, in the very alerting side of our lives, is Joana de Angelis, through the medium Divaldo Franco, talking about intrigue, and talking about intrigue as a virus that destroys the most beautiful things. When people feel, the worst thing we can see is when people, instead of reconciling, putting people together, they try to divide, push people away, and not only that, create plots and intrigues. This is sad. Unfortunately, it's still a feature of the human mind on the earth. But there is a beautiful interview with Divaldo Franco about the power of kindness. He has just launched a campaign on kindness in Brazil, and we are embracing it and sharing it with everybody else. There are beautiful tips about Allan Kardec on formation of Spiritist groups. We're going to dedicate a whole show in that regard and much more. This issue of the magazine is packed, according to the spiritual guidance, to really make us dive more coherently in regards to how we live and lead our Spiritist centers. Also, our sister radio, Bezerra Online Web Radio, is there right now, retransmitting live Kardec radio show and also on demand, plus other segments in Portuguese and in Spanish. And you can access that at Spiritist.com. They are located in Miami, Florida. Also, today we have a special guest who will be with us for a brief moment to talk about cultural competency, which can help immigrant parents as well. Dr. Nera Venditti from Succeed in America is with us here live today, and very briefly she's going to be here talking to us about the very important issue on how we can succeed in a workplace or in our lives when we are immigrants, especially for immigrant parents, because this is what the show is all about today. It's about immigrant parents. And I would tell you, it's not an easy issue. And we have a lot to share with you. A lot to share because, as Allan Kardec clearly stated in the Spirit's book, Question and Answer 208, when Kardec asked this very, very question, 208, don't the spirits of the parents exert an influence on their children after birth? And the spirits answered, a very great influence, because as we have already said, spirits should aid in one another's progress. As it is, the spirits of the parents have the mission of developing their children through education. This is a task for them. If they fail to perform it, they will be guilty. So, dear listener, what an important thing for all of us to know. Of course, you may know, even if you are a Spiritist, that parents have a great influence, but what about immigrant parents? Because it's not a simple issue. Nowadays, in the world, there are more than 200 million immigrants. In the United States alone, statistics tell, by the United Nations data in 2005, that the United States holds at least between 10 to 20% of immigrants. South America is not much, not to date, a country that holds a lot of immigrants. It's only 1%. So we're talking about places like Europe and North America being packed with immigrants. And the life of immigrants is all about acculturation. Acculturation is the process in which there is an adaptation to the new. But not everybody's ready, because there is usually a lot of resistance. Resistance to this multiculturation aspect. There is this ethnocentricity. People feel like, this is my way, I love, and they think they are not ethnocentric. Ethnocentricity is when people think, my culture is the best, the food of my country is the best, the way we are is the best. This is called ethnocentricity. We think our culture is the best. When we move to another country and we keep our minds at that level, we're not into the new culture. It's not a plus. People think it's beautiful, but it's not. And if we're passing on this to our children, we're going to have a lot of intergenerational conflicts. Many parents feel like, I have to teach my children about my country. Why? You don't have to. You can. You don't have to. Because your children has a different reincarnatory plan. You can invite, you can share, but not push and impose. No, they have to speak my country's language. They don't have to. They can. Because from the Spiritist perspective, we need to raise awareness that when we are incarnating and reincarnating, we are reincarnating with a plan. If our children were born in a different country, it means their plan has some new features, not necessarily the same as ours. We can't expect that they are going to walk the same pathway and embrace our culture as if it's theirs, because it's not theirs. Literally, it's not theirs. If we don't understand that, we're going to create a lot of generational conflicts, and it's going to be very, very difficult, escalating to challenges that science reveals as being the greatest challenge is when we achieve what is named dissonant acculturation. It is when people, they really are stressed out because their children learn the language of the country. Like, for example, in the United States, they learn English. They don't want to speak the other language, and they block themselves in regard to the parents' culture. This is called dissonant acculturation, and parents are very stressed out. They shouldn't, because as Spiritists, we should understand that our children were born in a different pathway. We should share, but not impose, not push, not obligate, because their pathway is different. And but they need to speak my language. They need to know the folks. They need to watch the soap operas from Brazil. Really? Why? Is that really imperative for the growth of the spirit? Not necessarily. If they had to know and embrace the culture of the parents, they would probably have been born in the country of the parents. So are parents prepared for the challenge? It seems to you, if you are listening to this and you are an immigrant parent, you may be like, but Vanessa, you said this is a show to help immigrant parents. And you're just defending the children. No, we're not taking sides. We're just sharing. The Spiritist view is such that brings a lot of peace to our hearts. We can share, but not impose. If they like it, they like it. They don't like it. And we need to teach our children, look, you're not better than I because you're fluent in another language that I'm not. Because that's pride. When children start acting out, with pride, humiliating parents, almost like bullying their parents for not being fluent in the language, for not understanding the culture that they are in. Spiritism resolves and solves all of these problems by telling parents and children, talk to each other as spirit to spirit. Spiritism is the unique solution. But of course, there is a lot that professional view on immigration can help us. And after this first break, we're going to open the line to the expert in the field of immigration, especially in the United States of America. Dr. Nara Venditti from Succeed in America is here with us at Kardec Radio. And after this first break, she's going to be here with us, enlightening us about the important issues on cultural competency. Also because as of this show, she's going to promote a whole series helping people to find new ways into getting more culturally competent in their workplace and, of course, in their lives after this break.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, it's all about helping immigrant parents. It's not easy to be an immigrant parent. To be a parent is a mission in itself. To be an immigrant, it's challenging, though may be a beautiful journey. Science currently reports that the three main challenges of being an immigrant parent encompasses the parental adaptation difficulty, which is natural, the lack of time they spend with their children due to a lot of workload, and the language barrier. And these are the top three challenges that immigrant parents live, besides being a parent itself. So, what do we do? How do we empower parents to become, who are immigrants, to become more culturally competent? The resistance needs to be worked out. So to talk about this and much more, we have here with us our dear Dr. Nera Venditti from Succeed in America, who has been a great collaborator at Cardiac Radio. She's here with us today. Thank you so much, Nera, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. I am really honored to have this opportunity to speak to your audience.
And we have been receiving a lot of great feedback from people through the emails about the previous segments in which you help immigrants understand more about how to succeed in the workplace. Now I understand you are going to dedicate the upcoming series to the specific, more universal component of being culturally competent. What is it, Dr. Venditti?
Well, what is cultural competency? Cultural competency means to function effectively in different cultural environments. Like to say, to be short. And why is cross-cultural competency so important for organization success, for example? And there are two reasons. One big reason is a shifting demographics. And another huge reason is global workforce convergence. I've recently read an ad by Citibank in a Russian newspaper. Here's it, the translation. And don't be surprised, Vanessa, if it sounds kind of strange and absurd. I'll explain all about it. Not only do we speak Russian, we also know that we are not allowed to whistle inside. Let me now explain this. Most Russians are very superstitious, and according to a Russian superstition, it's very bad luck to whistle in the house. It is believed that all your money will go out the door. So this is a superstition, and being from Soviet origin, I never whistle inside. And now Citibank understands that the meaning of this proverb. By demonstrating that they understand, they connect to the Russian community. They also understand that ethnic market in general is too big to ignore, and so is a foreign-born and immigrant employee pool, which numbers 26 million in this country, and over 16% of employee pool. And it's actually growing. Even in spite of a recent decline of birth rate across the board, it's still growing in the United States, especially compared with some other countries. Now, we all know, and it's been broadly discussed in the media, that the American workforce is aging, right? But when we take a look at numbers, we kind of stop and think. Here's a few numbers, and I know that I don't have a lot of time. I'll just throw in a few numbers. The 2010 census showed that persons aged 45 to 64 years of age now constitutes 1/4 of the U.S. population. That's quite a huge number. 46% of workers in the U.S. are nearing retirement. At the same time, the immigrant workforce is young, and it's growing, and the workplace and the marketplace is becoming more and more diverse. And what's interesting, the foreign-born population of the United States is slightly more than the entire population of Canada. This is according to the U.S. Census Bureau. 1 in 5 U.S. residents speak a foreign language at home. And, some industries cannot even survive without foreign-born labor. And here's another interesting factor. In the recent years, illegal immigration into the United States has tapered off, decreased somewhat. At the same time, the immigration of professionals and highly educated individuals increased. So, and it's very important in our knowledge-oriented economy. Some industries cannot even survive without the foreign-born labor. Academia, we have a lot of PhD in this country and across the globe, who work in the country other than their native countries. Such areas and fields as technology, science, pharmaceuticals, medical field, to say nothing of the hospitality industry, for example. Now, because of these demographic trends, globalization, and diversity of the workplace, organizations are really concerned how to attract and retain, with attracting and retention of employees from diverse cultural backgrounds. But not only that, also with the needs, meeting the needs of increasingly diverse mix of customers. Now, as we see, the multicultural professionals represent an important resource for the American organizations. The challenge here is to remove barriers and increase the opportunities that will allow companies and organizations to leverage the talents and abilities of the multicultural talent. Now, what are the barriers here? One big barrier is unconscious bias. We still want to hire people who look like us, who speak like us, who think like us, but when we look around, there are not a lot of people who are like us, and they're becoming fewer and fewer because of the diversity. And this is, so we come across here the unconscious bias. And this bias, as far as foreign-born labor is concerned, stems from two major differences, cultural and linguistic differences. And they manifest on two stages of a career of a professional, and on hiring, recruiting, hiring, and retention, promotion, and advancement. And here's what's interesting. Many foreign-born and immigrant professionals are highly educated, highly motivated, but they don't get into leadership positions. So what's the reason for that? One of the recent researchers pointed out that one of the reasons is the perception, again, the bias on one hand. On the other hand is a lack of executive presence and inability to package your brilliance when you're functioning in other cultural environment. This is about the importance. And one more thing, it's, of course, employers have to give a thought to this because we're on the brink of a leadership crisis. The population is aging, younger generation is not getting there in terms of leadership and management positions a lot, but it's not solely to the employers. Employees have a stake in the success in their own success. If they are interested in advancing their careers, they should seek the answers to questions like, what are my shortfalls? Why haven't I been promoted? Why my voice is not heard? Maybe it's an accent. Maybe that's the way I formulate my thoughts. And what can I do to change all this? But I'm getting into different area, and I'm ready to face your next question.
Yeah, so how can people then overcome these language and cultural barriers and possible misunderstandings?
Well, there are lots of ways. I'm very pleased to say, and again, this is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. Not only native speakers, but the non-native speakers should, pay attention to that. Let me start about a few obstacles. Let me talk about a few obstacles. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to, there's a quote. I'd like to quote an old joke. It goes like this: Sicilian mafia makes you an offer you cannot refuse. Armenian mafia makes you an offer you cannot understand. Well, of course, why? Because of the way, foreigners pronounce words. Now, here's a few points how to understand foreign accents. This is from the standpoint from the native speaker. Mm-hmm. There are a few key points, and I'm talking about native speakers because communications is a two-way process. We need to understand how native speakers communicate and vice versa. Point number one: don't pretend that you understand. Just say, sorry, or I apologize, I'm having difficulty understanding you. Could you say that again more slowly? Just a little. So when you do that, and if you're a native speaker, make sure your tone is gentle and smile. Try not to be irritated. I know it's a little bit difficult, but it takes a little practice. If you say that with a right tone, this will be more effective phrase because the other party will understand that you're not arrogant. You just want to help to, move on the communication process. In a way, this is a magic phrase. On the other hand, when a native speaker speaks, he or she needs to speak slower and enunciate, which means to pronounce distinctly the words. And, keep in mind that we have more than 2,000 languages in the world, and arguably more than 4,500 sounds in all these languages. English language has only 44. So there's a lot of opportunity that these sounds do not overlap. And if this is one thing, the difference of the phonetic system. Another thing is the difference in the music of language. Intonation is different. So add to this, personal idiosyncrasies, the tempo of the speech, and you see the picture. There can be a lot of misunderstandings. So these were like two tips I, presented today on accent reduction or accent makeover on one hand, and on the other hand, on understanding the non-native speakers without insulting them, because it's very easy to insult people in this situation.
And as we're talking, Nara, about parents and children, it can happen in the home as well. When children who are born in the new country, they may have these conflicts in regard to language barriers. So this may be also something that can be promoted at home for children to help parents, but not be arrogant in regard like, oh, you don't know, you're dumb, and, you don't speak fluently, you don't know how to speak correctly, etc. So the other question that we had was about what would be the main tips for people who want to be more culturally competent? What would be the first step in a few steps that they need to focus upon?
Well, in the first step to understanding is actually cultural differences is the self-awareness. Once we understand our own culture, it's easier to understand the others. And, Stephen Covey has this saying, which I kind of remember very often and quoted: first seek to understand and then to be understood. In my opinion, this is kind of second tip. You understand the other culture, you show that you're respectful to your family in cross-ethnical marriages, for example, to your customers, to your neighbors, to your kids, and to your parents, and then you will understand too. Respect is very important. And this is all about respect and about building relationships. So first seek to understand and then to be understood. And then there are lots of other points which are more of technical character that will help us to improve clear communication. One of the things that is directly related to communication styles is the fact that different cultures have different communication styles, and there are a few broad categories. So there are direct communicators, like people from the United States, Germany, Holland, some parts of Russia, and then there is the rest of the world, and you hear the rest of the world, which has more indirect communication style. They speak in different ways, like Americans will lay out the issue right away, and they may come as arrogant and too brush to, say, Mexican, a person of Mexican origin, or Middle Eastern, or South American. So we need to be aware of these different communication styles, and Americans look for data or something said directly. Then you need to speak up. Many people from Asia are taught that they should not speak up. I mean, you don't have to be rude or arrogant, but you need to be assertive to prove your point, and that plays out in the workplace and in the family. Because if you don't say anything, the other party from direct culture may not understand it. It's just like in the, at the job interview. If you don't talk about your accomplishments, Americans will assume that you don't have any.
Exactly. It's something that the specific culture. So we need to be a very good observer to become culturally competent. We need to observe, get to know the culture, and what do we do for? What would be the main tip for people, whether they are parents or they are children, who are in this immigration context, if they find themselves truly resistant to the new, to the acculturation process? What would you recommend that they do to work on their resistance?
Well, be patient. Understand that things don't happen at once. Transition is not easy. If we move even from one city to another, transition could be very stressful. Even we don't know, how to drive around. Maybe we cannot even drive. That happened to me at the onset of my stay here. I walked all around. Things happen step by step. Keep in mind that look into yourself, understand that you're stressed and anxious, and think, what can you do? One way is to seek groups like yours. Listen to the programs like yours, because education is very important. So patience, education, and try to take care of your emotions.
That's interesting. That's very therapeutic. So, Dr. Venditti, we know that kickstarting today, the upcoming segments of Succeed in America Cardiac Radio will be dedicated to this very issue, helping people become more culturally competent, right?
Yes, and I will ask from your listeners, from our listeners actually, to be proactive in seeking the answers to their questions. They can always email me at nara@Succeed in America, and I will cover their questions in the upcoming shows or on my blogs, because it's my mission to help people to succeed, not necessarily only professionally, but also acquire the peace of mind, when they transition from one country to the other, because I went through it myself, and I know how hard it could be, especially when you're doing it to the family, and there is a difference between the kids being brought up in different culture, in different environment, and the values and customs that we adults have.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Nara, for being with us live at Cardiac Radio today, and we're really looking forward to the new series of Succeed in America Kardec Radio. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So, dear listener, we just await the upcoming series of Succeed in America Kardec Radio. The previous ones was all about empowering the immigrant to the workforce. But you can go to succeedinamerica.com to get to know more about it. Nara Vintiti was with us at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore years ago, and she helped us by promoting a beautiful workshop on how we can, be more effective into the new culture by accepting that we need to work on our differences, etc., and bringing Spiritism in a new setting as well. And she was also invited by the University of Maryland to give a campus-wide workshop to everyone because, as she said, in the United States, the immigrant population is enormous. And the University of Maryland was truly grateful to her amazing professional tools to help immigrants succeed in the workplace. Just go to succeedinamerica.com and contact, as she said, be proactive. Contact her. Don't be shy. Go for what you need. Dear listener, we have a lot more. There's so much to discuss. There is the Spiritist help for immigrant parents as well. What is it? How can we do it? Can we actually do it? Yes, we can. Though we're not Obama, we can tell. Yes, we can. We are going to give a short break, and we'll be right back with you.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, it's all about the Spiritist help for immigrants. And we just learned from Dr. Nara Vintiti from Succeed in America about tips and hints on how to become more culturally competent. It's not easy, so she said, be patient. And patience is everything we need. It's one of the main virtues that is stated in the Gospel according to Spiritism to us. We need to be patient. But our society nowadays, it's like, no, we need it now. We need it today. Instant gratification. Patience is something that is almost foreigner in our world, but it's the number one thing to succeed in the adaptation. Why? Because Mentor Joseph once said to us many years ago something quite unique. To immigrate is to reincarnate in a reincarnation. Of course, philosophically speaking, reincarnate in the sense you are going to boost a new part of your personality. It's not that you build a new personality, but there are features of yours, of ours, that will be more enhanced than others. So, big deal. We just need to embrace it. And the thing is, we may find new parts of ourselves that are totally new. Are we ready for it? Because it's going to be very hard to be into this new setting as immigrants and not adopt new features, new learning, new habits, new cultural tips. The ones who succeed are not the ones who proudly say, oh, I am who I am. I've been here for 40 years, and I'm still the same old person. What about the law of progress? Progress means we need to change. We need to be better. We need to be transformed. And question, do we think it is by chance that we are allowed by God to immigrate to a country? Another thing that Mentor Joseph also shares with us, when we move to another place, whether in the same country, from a state to another, from a city to another, or from a country to another, from a continent to another, it's all about spiritual allowance. There's something there for you to learn, because after all, incarnation is not a holiday. We are here to learn, to progress, to boost ourselves to the new. As the Spirit's book says quite clearly, when we reincarnate, there are three main things we're doing. We are using that opportunity to learn the new, to lead us to perfection. We are redressing previous mistakes, and we are doing our share in God's creation. Well, so what do I have to learn in this new? So, immigrant parents, the best way to empower your life is open yourself to the new. That takes humility on us to say, there's something I have never heard before. How many parents, they feel their ways of raising their children is the best way to go. And then they move to a new country. They find out people do differently. For example, in the United States, there is this habit of sleepover. It's the friends of our children or our children, they're invited to go to their friend's house and sleep over. And some immigrants, they say, that's crazy. Oh, my God, I don't like it. That's okay. But let us understand why people do this. What is on the behind the scenes? The same as, for example, in the United States, and I'll give you these ideas about the United States because majority of our listeners are in the United States of America. And even if you are not, it may resemble a lot of these features. So, for example, we have had many wars in the United States. Of course, it's not the best way to go. And some people may claim, like ourselves, we used to think like, oh my God, they like so much to be in wars and to fight. How about if we study the history of the United States of America to get to know why? Why? Is it because they like it? Or because it became almost like a cultural feature? Since the Independence War, it wasn't easy. They had to fight to be independent, to form the nation. It is a generational issue. Not saying it's always going to be like this, because as we're going to listen in the last program of the month of October, the United States of America also has a mission, a spiritual mission. And what are we doing here? What are you doing as a parent? Just telling, oh, our country is the best, but we're in the United States just to make money. Really? As a spiritist, that's really not coherent. So, for example, parents, statistics, and also science says, for example, in this study in 2005, in the Handbook of Clinical Psychology, Morelli and others have researched, and they found out that, for example, Turkish and Moroccan immigrant parents in the Netherlands attribute more importance to cultural maintenance in the home and family context, but they consider adaptation more important in work situations. Exactly. The same happens for Asian cultures, Hispanic cultures. They feel like at home they speak their country, the home country's language. They keep some of the habits, the way they dress up, etc., etc. But then when they go to the workplace, they behave more accordingly to the new host country, which is fine. It's like halfway into acculturation. And Some immigrant mothers from South America share more cognitions and practices with U.S. American mothers in their culture of destination than mothers in their cultures of origin. And for example, Asian parents, they may bring their parents, the grandparents of their children, to help at home, and some issues may come up because, according to scientific findings, that these challenges are raised up because the way we are raising our children in the new country may be very, very different. So in that regard, dear listener, it may be challenging. Challenges are a part of immigration, and additional challenges. That parents may be misunderstood, as Bernadette Leal was just sharing with us here in the chat room of Kardec Radio. They may be misunderstood by the way they raise their children. And some parents even may feel, according to scientific findings by Levesque in his paper, that immigrant parents may further experience significant loss in their effectiveness as parents. Because in the new setting, it's like, that's not the way we raise, we bring up our children in my country. So am I wrong, or are they wrong? What do I do? Because then, especially for teenagers, they come home and say, but others are doing this and it's that way. You don't understand because you come from your country and you don't understand how it works. Good. Let's bring Spiritism to bring peace at home. Because Spiritism is going to combine the most scientific findings and accommodate with its own scientific findings, because Spiritism is also a science, according to Allan Kardec. And science says that first we need awareness, much like what Dr. Naravinditi was saying. We need to be self-aware, and we need to be aware of the scenario. Yes, in Immigrant, yes, we are not the same in this life. Big deal. Look at the example of Emmanuel in his two masterpieces, 2,000 years ago and 50 years later. He talks about being the first one, the Roman senator, Publius Lentulus, and 50 years later, he is born as a Jewish slave, working for Romans. There you go. So there you talk about him being reborn, and actually he was an immigrant in Rome, much like today. And then you may think, oh my God, that's much like my story. And that is because you can tell if the reason why you're immigrating is mostly to learn new things, or also encompasses what we call in Spiritism expiation. Coming back to redress previous mistakes and choices, and sometimes in the skin of immigrants. How can you tell it? If you go to the book Action and Reaction, the second to last chapter, it talks about the different types of suffering. Suffering that boosts evolution. It's like going to the gym. You go there, the muscle is sore, but it doesn't make you feel guilty because you know it's good for the muscle. So you come to the new country and you don't have any reminiscences, you don't have any sadness. You just feel like, wow, everything's so new. Wow, I want to learn it. This means you were there probably either for the first time, or it's not only much about atonement regarding that culture. But as André Louis shares in the book Action and Reaction, when there is a type of pain that is associated with expiation, he calls it pain expiation. We could call it suffering expiation or suffering atonement. What does it mean? That pain encompasses redressing previous mistakes, and we suffer. So if you are an immigrant or a parent immigrant who feel not only the pain of the new, but you feel ashamed for being an immigrant, you feel guilty, you feel less inferior, pay attention. It may well be a sign that you're back into that culture as an immigrant, because in the past you took for granted many things. Much like the Senator Publius Lentulus in one life reincarnating another life somewhere else, and then being brought to the Roman culture as a slave, as an immigrant, and having to redress mistakes, now in a position of somewhat less privileged, let's say this way. If there is some type of pain, then you know you're there to redress, meaning don't feel like a victim. Get out of the victim position and empower yourself, much like the slave Nestoria in the book 50 years ago. He was humble. He knew the Romans were really not walking the line of fraternity, but he didn't become rebellious. He didn't curse them. On the contrary, he became a Christian, embraced it at the toughest times, and he helped others, irrespective of the fact that he was often mistreated by the Romans. Somebody's mistake does not excuse our mistake. So, in that regard, we are learning the new. And our dear spirit friend, Francois de Genève, in chapter 5, by the way, chapter 5 in the Gospel According to Spiritism is the largest chapter. It's all about blessed are the afflicted. It can be a great resource for immigrant parents, for immigrants in general. It talks about the importance of not giving in to this vague sadness, as he says, chapter 5, item 25, believe me, and strongly resist these feelings that weaken your willpower. Meaning, don't stay in the new country, dear immigrant parent or immigrant, reminiscing, oh, my country's so good, my food is so good, the way we dress, the soap operas, etc. That is going to make us weaker. No wonder this topic in the gospel is entitled melancholy. Melancholy, it's about depression. Many immigrants become depressed because they resist to the new, and they are angry because they are not patient to embrace the new, and they don't bridge it up to their children. And also, speaking the language. Science already says immigrants who speak the language of the host country have higher self-esteem. So if you want to help yourself, empower your communication skills. Learn the language, because if you don't, you are going to feel less, inevitably. Science tells it. Of course, we are reborn to communicate. We are social beings. Don't refuse to communicate in the new language, because if God allowed you to be in this new country, you are empowered to learn the new language. Do not blame others. Do not resist. Do not feel like a victim, because there is no victim in this world, and you are not a victim either. So the best way is to empower your self-esteem. Otherwise, your parental skills will really, really suffer. Because if a parent has bad self-esteem, what are they going to pass on to their children? That's why Allan Kardec was asking this question in the Spirit's book. Question and answer 208. Do parents really influence their children? A lot, they say. And that's the purpose. They have to influence their children. So imagine if your self-esteem is low. You're teaching your child unconsciously. It's about the non-verbal communication, as neuroscience says. It's more powerful than even the verbal one, the non-verbal communication. Jesus taught more without words than with words. And here we are, still unfolding his legacy. So, dear parents, go find a therapist for you. Go find a place that can empower your language skills. With all due respect, we need to empower even our communities in Spiritist centers. What do we mean? Science tells that the best way to help immigrant parents, and if you want the article, email me at kardecradio@gmail.com, and I'll forward to you a beautiful paper, a scientific review that talks about these issues and more. And I can tell you that they say the best way to empower immigrant parents is to create a community support, to unify, they say, to boost family reunification. But now we question, as we are talking about Spiritist help for immigrant parents, How can we boost family reunification if when they come to our Spiritist Center, we're speaking the language of another country, which is not even theirs? You know how they feel? Psychology explains. They refuse, especially when they are teenagers. They don't identify themselves. So then the Spiritist Center is not promoting family reunification. No wonder, for example, in the United States, we have experienced several waves, at least 3 to 4 waves of Spiritist parents who didn't succeed to promote Spiritism to their children, and they haven't become Spiritist leaders. Why? Because when they came to their teenage years, the Spiritist Center was speaking in another language other than English. Thus, they refused to get in because it's totally different. No wonder teenagers usually say, my parents' church. They talk about their parents, the Spiritist Center as their parents' church. Oh, the Brazilian church. It's not quite, dear friends, because Spiritist Centers are not churches, number one. And two, and they shall never be called as such. And two, they are not Brazilian. There's no Brazilian Spiritism. It's very sad when we see people addressing Spiritist centers as a Brazilian thing, because Spiritism, as Kardec says in the very Gospel According to Spiritism, it is not something that pertains to a single nationality. When Kardec talks about the universal component of Spiritism, it says it doesn't belong to any specific nationality. So when we see people allowing even newspapers to publish Brazilian Spiritism, they are doing a disservice to Spiritism, because Spiritism is not Brazilian. And we thank God that it was codified in France, because to show us that it doesn't belong to any culture in specific. It's universal. We're talking about a universal code of spirituality. So, parents, you need support, and you can find it in the Spiritist centers. If and only if the Spiritist Center is promoting the new culture to you, bringing your family together, much like what happens in the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, in the Spiritist Society of Virginia, and a few other centers, where teenagers come in, everybody speaks in English, all the activities are in English, meaning there is no division. Our teenagers don't feel like that. Oh, it's something from Brazil. No, our Spiritist centers are not specific to any culture, though majority of us are still Brazilians. This is very critical, dear listener, and we hope that this can be the major thing for you to empower your family, your relationship with your children, talking to your children in such a way. The spirit, Euripides Barçanufo teaches us, but that's going to be something that we'll do after the break.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit Mei, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.edicofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritist.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're talking about different ways in which Spiritism can promote empowerment to immigrant parents. It's not easy. It's not easy to be an immigrant. It's not easy even to be a parent. But when you combine both, it can be ever more challenging. But the best way to go is always to think, why? Let us remember when St. Augustine, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 14, Honor Father and Mother, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, it says there quite clearly that we need, first and foremost, to lead our children to God. But to lead our children to God, we need to know our way to God. How often we do things in our lives and say, no, God has nothing to do with this. We plan a party, and it's like, no, God has nothing to do with this. Come on, don't even mention that. Well, but God is present all the time. As the Spirit's book says, it's quite clear. God is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, meaning God is with us everywhere, all the time, and God is fully aware of everything. Is there a way for us to displace God and bring God only at certain times of our lives? No. So when we are immigrated, we say, God, now I understand. You allowed me to be here because there is a plan, something for me to learn. So if I do learn, I'm going to be better off than instead of pushing it aside and keeping myself in this ethnocentric life. I moved to another country, and instead of exchanging, we're not saying forget about your culture, but exchange. We isolate ourselves for fear. And what do we pass on to our children? Fear. Fear, 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 fear. And they are learning with us how to be afraid, not how to be strong, how to be empowered. Because how can we then in fear lead them to God? We can't. So to lead our children to God, we need to know our way to God. That's the first step for parents, and especially for immigrant parents. Allan Kardec didn't have children, but he was a great educator. And he brought to us many teachings that can be true empowerment to parents. And we cannot say, Kardec, but you didn't have children. How can you tell me these things? You don't know how it feels. Well, Jesus didn't have children either. I mean, literally he didn't. But still, he is the greatest role model of immigrant. If we parents, we want to be empowered in our parenting, we need to emulate our guide and model. When Kardec asked this question, 625 in the Spirit's book, to the illuminated minds, who is our guide and model on the earth? And they replied, Jesus. They didn't say Jesus, but not for parenting. No, it includes for parents as well. Jesus, though not being a parent, he is a spiritual parent of all of us. Not like God. He's not God. But he's like the tutor of all tutors, the master of all masters. He said, I am the master. I am. And if we're feeling sorrow, difficulties in our lives, there you have it. Jesus' main encounter with one of his disciples, Bartholomew. Bartholomew was very melancholic. He loved Jesus, follow the teachings, and you can read this beautiful chapter in the book Boa Nova, Through the Hands of Chico Xavier by the Spirit, Brother X, or Humberto de Campos. You're going to get to know about this encounter. It's not in English yet. We apologize for it, but hopefully soon it's going to come about and be published by the International Spiritist Council. Bartholomew was very melancholic, much like immigrants who feel sad and sorrow and in need of help. And he came to the Master once and said, Master, I love your teachings, but it's so hard. How many of us may feel it that way? It's so hard. We feel so different. Much like what Bernadette Leal was sharing with us here at Kardec Radio in the chat room. And thank you so much, Bernadette. You're going to win the stamp of Kardec Radio today by sharing so much with us. You say that you used to think that Americans were cold because they're not as emotional as Brazilians, until a lady told you, well, it's in our history. We suffered so much in wars, mothers losing our loved ones, that we learned to tough it up. Yes, we cry, but in our hearts we don't like to show it much, but we have a heart just like you. And Bernadette says she never forgot it. Bernadette, this reminds us of the story of Jesus and Bartholomew that we'll tell the end of the story very soon. But it reminds us of vision that the renowned medium Raul Teixeira, once when he stopped by in 2004 at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, he shared with us that once he was traveling in a train in the United States and he had this vision, this dream. It was about this southern type of home with a porch. There was a woman, and she was holding in her arms like an American soldier, and she was crying over the soldier who was her son. He had just come back from the Civil War. And then a spirit friend came to Raul and said, much like what Bernadette Leal heard from the American woman and just shared with us, deep inside, we're very similar. We have a heart, but the circumstances may be different. And before we go, tell us the recipe that Jesus gave to Bartholomew. Dear listener, you want to know more, right? And that's what Jesus told to Bartholomew. Bartholomew, it's not easy, but have you heard of good news that don't bring joy? This message is about joy because it is the good news that I'm sharing with you. So rejoice in your heart. Don't worry about the brothers who don't understand you, your father who is always cursing you, the other people who really put you down and undermine you. Remember, the trademark of the followers of the good news is joy, courage, and hope. For immigrant parents, this may be the recipe of success, spiritual success. Because we are not here reborn to repeat the same mistakes, to teach our children how to be arrogant, this or the other. All we have to do is to teach our children. Let us learn together, because it's in our reincarnatory plan that things are the way they are. You are born in a country that is not mine, and I have something to share with you. You may have something to share with me. And I will lead you in the best possible way to God. And when you are in your adulthood, we'll keep sharing at another level. Because parents and children, they have to adapt their relationship to the new phases of parenting. We cannot treat our children the same way from the day they are born to the day they go to the grave. Some parents, they are so overprotective. They're like, oh, but they're always going to be my baby. But they are not anymore. The best way to go is when we grow spiritually mature and we treat them as our beloved children, but they are not our babies anymore. And there's something now for them also to teach us when they are adults, especially. Parents always think that their child is the most special of the world, which is not a bad thing, because responsibility is there. But according to Spiritism, that type of narcissistic type of parenting is not very helpful because it incites pride and selfishness, which are two no-no things in our lives. So now, before we continue, we'd like to share with you something that is very important about how to empower also our children and parents in regards to social networking. So Dr. Magalhães in Spiritism for You is going to share with you, and after that, we'll be right back with you with some listeners who have been calling us.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listener. Welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic that a lot of people discuss nowadays, which is the risks and benefits of using social networking websites. And also, we're going to think about the responsibility of the information that I post. What are the consequences of my actions? Could the information that I'm posting on a website be actually damaging someone or helping someone? Let's have a look at the new phenomena of social networking from a scientific point of view and from a spiritist point of view. Although being a recent phenomenon, we already have multiple papers that analyze the effects of the use of social networking websites. The results are contradictory. Some papers support it, and some papers show the risks of the use. In a Cornell University study, students that were posting new information on a website and looking at their profiles felt more self-confident and actually fueled their self-esteem by using social media. Other studies show that social networking use could actually strengthen friendship bonds and also stamp out shyness or loneliness. On the other hand, a recently published American Academy of Pediatrics paper showed that significant using of social networking can actually cause depression, unsafe practices, aggressiveness, or self-destructive behaviors, although it is difficult to really gauge those results because we also know that people that are already depressed to start with tend to spend more time connected to social networking. Other studies have showed that continuous use of social networking can trigger eating disorders, interestingly enough, induce the number of divorces. As an example, Facebook was referenced in 20% of divorce petitions processed in 2009 by Divorce Online, which is a British law firm. What's important to get from this information, although we have some contradictory results, is that use of social media can actually be extremely positive or extremely negative, depending on how you use it, what's the information you're posting, what's your goal by using that tool. So in other words, social networking is a tool. Just like internet, it can be used for the good or it can be used for the bad. Looking from a spiritist point of view, we can have a very simple analysis of this matter. Let us take an example. Imagine that you're projecting a very negative thought towards a person. But now what you do in this new era of social networking is that you're going to type, and you type a comment and you post it in a website. What some people might forget is that the energy, that negative thought, all that imbalanced energy that you're posting online is going to be automatically projected not only into the person that is the object of the post, but in everyone that reads your website post. Considering that an average Facebook user has around 200 friends, and each one of those 200 friends have approximately 200 other friends, we can have an idea of the dramatic impact of the information that you're posting. On the other hand, if we're thinking about helping someone, we can actually, for example, post a very positive idea or a supportive comment or a nice passage or even a good morning to our friends, automatically all that energy that you're projecting into that thought is going to be transmitted not only to the friends, but the friends of your friends. And just by looking at that message, a lot of people can actually feel the good energy that you're projecting into it. This is just one example, but we can expand this in many other ways. For example, when you post an information online, remember that once posted, the information is almost impossible to remove from the internet. Second, a lot of people is going to have access to that information, so be careful. Protect yourself. Number 3, make sure that information is precise and it's true. Avoid sharing information that you don't know the source or any other kind of information that's going to send the wrong message to the people reading it. And in everything you do online, follow the same guidelines that you use in your daily life. Follow the law of love, of charity, and be responsible for every action. Thank you so much, my friends, and God bless us.
Dear listener, you just heard about social networking. This is something that immigrant parents also need to know. Tonight at the Spiritist side of Baltimore, we're going to be giving a specific talk about a Spiritist view on media parental control. Basically, we're going to talk about social networking and how parents, from a Spiritist perspective, should address it. By being simply non-knowledgeable about it, I don't know what Facebook is all about, I don't like it, or this or the other, is not going to help. By being away from what is already there. 94 to 98% of Facebook users are in between the ages of 18 and 24 years old, meaning it's very young. And if we're older than that, we may be in a more high school environment than we imagine. It's only 11% of the population of the earth that use Facebook, 1.6 billion people. In regards to the teenage world, not children, though many parents are allowing their children who are less than 13 years of age to be on Facebook, it's not advisable. It's too much for a child to take. But anyhow, from a Spiritist perspective, tonight we have a lot to share with you, and it can be very inspirational, very empowering too. In the meantime, would like to open the line to our dear Alba Morales, who is from the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. She is here with us to share her thought. Hi, Alba. Thank you so much for being with us at Cardiac Radio today.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's a great opportunity, and actually this is a great program since it's a high percentage of immigrants that we are here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to share with you and our dear listeners is just kind of linking with the idea that you were talking about a few minutes ago, how the main goal of parents is to provide a spiritual education to the children, be like facilitators for them to connect better with God. Because each one of us as an individual, we have our reincarnatory plan, and we cannot be successful in that plan if we are disconnected from God.
Mm-hmm.
This is a universal truth. So if we keep it in our minds that we are citizens of the world, and we are, as spirits, we all are immigrants, because our real country is the spirit world. We have a different perspective of immigration. So it doesn't matter if I'm living in the country that I was born and I have all these cultural accommodations, even though as a spirit, I'm an immigrant, because planet Earth is just one planet among many, many, many other planets in which the spirit need to do an internship to learn and to evolve. And I was reading from the book Our Daily Bread by the Spirit Emmanuel through the leadership of Francisco Xavier. Is this very powerful sentence that, allow me to say, I personally keep it in the mirror. Is honest, hard-working parents shall create in the minds of their sons a mentality of personal effort and effective cooperation. And this is beyond frontiers. This is beyond cultures, languages, ways to see life. Because after all, our main goal is to really be reunited in this family constellation, as Joanna De Angelis has been teaching us. That's our main goal. So yes, probably as an immigrant in a country, in the United States, since we are here, yes, we give up things from our culture, but we're also gaining more things, and that's a learning for the spirit. As you mentioned before, from the spirit Emmanuel, Publius Lentulus, and all the incarnations he had in different states and cultures. So I just would like to share with families, parents, educators, that we are all immigrants as spirits, and we are in the planet Earth that is temporary, but also is a very useful and powerful opportunity for us to learn. So in that regard, with that idea, it also helps us to survive our daily struggles of not knowing the culture or the language or the barriers that we encounter, not only as a parent, but as an immigrant. Keep in mind the sentence of Emmanuel.
That's great, Alba. Thank you so much for bringing that up and for sharing that to reinforce to our listener that we're all in the same boat. And, right, we're on the same boat.
Yeah.
And as you said, we're all immigrants spirit-wise. So keeping that in mind, we always, and this is something, Alba, that you brought to us, that in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, it's one of the recommendations of the Spirit André Luiz. He says we should rule out the word foreigner from our vocabulary in chapter 1 of the book. We may be an American reincarnated in the body of, in a current personality of a South American country who came back as an immigrant, and bringing that type of foreigner feeling is not spiritist at all, right?
No, it doesn't help at all.
Exactly. So we thank you so much for sharing that insight. You being an immigrant parent as well, you know better the challenges. And would you give one last tip for the listener who is out there as an immigrant parent and is feeling the struggle of those challenges in parenting while being an immigrant?
Yes, sure, Vanessa. There are two practical things to do, basically. The first one is to really make an effort to learn the language. It makes a difference when we learn the language. Even if we are not fluent, we have a better understanding, and we can connect better with the people around us regarding ideas or emotions. And the second one is to keep feeding, nurturing our spirituality, because we have the support of the mentors, and the spirit mentors or guardian angels, they don't speak a specific language that we have on planet Earth. They speak the language of love, and that's a universal truth. So if we, as a parents or individuals, we connect with our mentors, asking them for inspiration, support, and we study, we read, we commit with our self-improvement, we're going to see the results not only in ourselves but in our family, in our children. So they're the two practical tools to navigate the parenting years, let's put it that way.
Yes, you're right. Thank you so much, Alba, for being with us today. And we know that later today you'll be leading a Spiritist session for children and youth at Spirit Side of Baltimore. And today the topic is about I honor my parents. And what is the feature?
Acceptance. Acceptance in the sense of reincarnation, how we have the parents that we have because they are the parents that we miss.
That's all we need to know for today.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for the listeners.
All right, thank you. So now we have here with us also Kirsten DeMello, who is going to share a thought with us as well. Hi, Kirsten. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me. And the show today is absolutely very enlightening. And also just to sort of piggyback a little bit off of what Alba was saying, what you were saying, sharing about the book Among Brothers of Other Lands. It's an amazing book. Both for me, it's American-born, quote-unquote, at least in this life. As you had just said, who knows where I was in a previous life? Who knows where any of us were in previous lives? Perhaps I was living in some other country. But the interesting thing I just wanted to comment on, both as a child of immigrant parents, as you know, my parents were from Brazil, and they brought me up here, and I was born here. But it's interesting, this idea of the immortality of the soul, and to also know that there's always, as you said, this idea of, well, you're American, maybe you know how to do things better. And quite honestly, as an American, I think each American has their own way of doing things. And making, according to the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, it's so interesting how the spirits come and teach us about this cultural adaptation. And it's beautiful, the research that you shared earlier about also Dr. Venditti, because it's so true. We see this universal truth about this adaptation that's so very much appropriate. And also, I suppose if I can be so bold as to say that it's not that we need to go and bring a mass amount of Americans to our centers, but that we need to at least, as you often say, make things available to the English speakers. Not just Americans, but anyone who speaks English. You could be coming from Europe and speaking English as well, or London, England, and you speak English. But at least perhaps we could say we have the responsibility and at least making things available. Not saying that all of a sudden we're going to have this huge influx of English speakers, but at the very least being culturally sensitive, right? And I just wanted to say definitely we've enjoyed so much the show today, and we'll be sharing it with immigrants and non-immigrants for sure. Very enlightening.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. Thank you, because you are on the other side of the road. We're talking about immigrant parents, though you're a parent, but you know what it is to be an immigrant child. And I'm not an immigrant, but the child of immigrant parents. And though they really fulfill their mission, but you have seen how maybe challenging for immigrant parents to raise their children with the challenges that parents face themselves. And now as a parent, you probably understand better so many things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I may, just on a personal note, I watched this odd dichotomy of each one of my parents sort of experiencing the American culture differently. On one end, I had a father who was very culturally adapted because he's fluent in the language, because he came here when he was a teenager. But inversely, my mother came here when she was an adult after she got married to my father. So it was much more difficult for her to adapt, although she completely wanted to. So it was interesting because I sort of, in a sense, lucked out, quote unquote, because I saw my parents wanting to be culturally adapted to the best of their ability. So it was perhaps a little bit differently, but at the same time, they also shared with me the Brazilian culture, which I truly respect and appreciate. So I think it makes children more cultured when they have both ends of the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. But they also didn't make our Spiritist Center a place where it was for Brazilians, but they really made it something spiritual spiritual, something uplifting for all people of all walks of life. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing and for being with us at Kardec Radio. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Dear listener, you know how it is to be an immigrant. And it's a privilege. People may think, oh, it's so hard, I feel less. I don't feel less. No, I feel more. More in the sense like I have more opportunities to, as Kirsten said, to learn new things. But if we are open, not necessarily in the first steps we'll be open, but then we open up. It doesn't matter if this far you resisted. It matters that now you want to flush away the resistances. Remember of St. Paul, or the Apostle Paul, as we say in the Protestant tradition. Saul himself had problems resisting the new, and then he embraced it. Big deal. Big deal in the sense of, some people are like, I've been like this, I'm always going to be like that. I don't like where I am, and I'm never going to like it. No, you can. It's up to you to give the first step. And if you made mistakes, another example we can emulate. St. Augustine. St. Augustine, read the story, because he really messed up. He was really living a life, a very mundane life. And then he changed. It's funny because so many of us, even in Spiritism, we preach this Puritan way, and that's not what Jesus taught us. Jesus did not ask us to be angels. He just said, love your Father above all things, and your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say you have to be perfect. He said, make this your goal, but not saying you're going to be out of the blue. So we don't expect immigrant parents to be perfect, because no parent is perfect. Children shouldn't expect parents to be perfect. They need to be real with their children and say, look, do you know how it hurts? How it hurts to be away from the family? And we're here for you, but you need to give us a break. You are not like any other child in the street who has been born here. You have a plus. You have another culture in your plate. Rejoice. Add for your own benefit. Don't be arrogant, putting down because it's not your country's language or culture. Open up as well, because we need to teach our children to be less narcissistic. Our cultural settings today are pushing our children to be egocentric, egotistic, narcissistic. You see Facebook, we think it's beautiful, children taking pictures of themselves and showing this and showing the other, and they don't even consider others who are there and don't have what they have. I doubt if this is the way Jesus taught us, this narcissistic way. We doubt. It's not about us. It's about those who are in need. Teaching our children, this is something that also science tells, that merges with Spiritism. Reunifying the family, creating a community support that serves others who are less privileged is going to diminish the challenges between parent and child, especially for immigrant parents. Because even in the United States, you will find communities that are less fortunate. And there are lots of programs that you can engage in and bring your children and raise awareness on them that they have a lot to give, instead of only thinking about themselves and asking for the world to serve them, whereas we should be teaching them to serve the world. Dear listener, we know you want more. And after this break, Kirsten DeMello is going to tell us more. She's going to talk about universal law of labor. It's in the Spirit's book, and specifically she's going to talk about individual responsibility.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Do you find yourself with no time to stop and read or meditate about Spiritism or spirituality? We have a great solution for you. The audio CD called Unfolding Our Spiritual Nature, Path of Harmony by Ra Tashira is an enlightening CD with a question and answer session as well. Feel the enrichment and purchase your copy today at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Learn more about indigo and crystal children with the book The New Generation, The Spiritist View on Indigo and Crystal Children by Devoto Franco with Vanessa Anzalone. Whether you're a parent or not, this book will enrich your mind. Go to www.ssbaltimore.org and click on Bookstore and purchase your copy today.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
Now we return to our program.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. We continue on with our study in Part 3 of the Spirit's book, The Divine Natural Laws. You know, William James, the famous American philosopher and psychologist who actually was trained as a physician in the mid-1850s, he said something quite interesting, and it refers to labor and work, and he says that action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. Something very interesting for us to reflect about. We learned last week about the definition of what labor is. It is everything that is useful, or to quote the spirits directly, every useful occupation is labor. And that's a quote directly from question and answer 675. We know that nowadays science, research, and many different modalities, many different therapeutic techniques, this idea of work, especially for those who suffer from depression or other type of emotional or mental issues, we know that research has shown that to be useful, to work, to even exercise, to be active, to do something is actually quite beneficial for us. So it's not by chance that the law of labor is, well, a law, and is one of the laws that draws us closer to our happiness. So something that has always been in existence also helps us to draw us closer to our very own happiness and also likewise the happiness of others. Perhaps even we may find ourselves, as spiritists or not spiritists, asking ourselves, well, when we become more evolved, when we go to a more evolved planet, perhaps like Jupiter or other more evolved planets, will I have to work as hard as I am, as the famous saying always goes, blood, sweat, and tears? Well, very interestingly enough, this question is addressed in question 678, and the spirits answer, and they help with this redefinition of labor when they tell us that the nature of labor is relative to that of the need. The fewer the material needs, the less material the labor. So this is interesting. Perhaps sometimes we are so used to this manual labor that we have that mindset that if we are not sweating and our muscles aren't being used, physically speaking, then well, I'm not laboring. Well, since we already learned that labor is any useful occupation, we know that there are other forms of labor. They're not just physical, especially as we become more evolved and we become less dense, less material, as it is on higher, more evolved worlds. So let us not think, dear friends, that as we evolve, that at some point we have to do less work. Quite the contrary. Truly quite the contrary, because the more evolved we become in the higher spheres, actually the more we are working. Not so much in that physical sense, that idea that we have, but a much more superior level of work as we know it. But nowadays we even may find people in our day-to-day lives on planet Earth who are born with a lot of wealth or just a lot of assets. And the spirits address this question as well. What do those people do who are born with all the assets that they could possibly need? So they don't have to physically labor over things. And Kardec asks us, well, what about those people? Don't they have to labor? Since, according to spiritual literature, each one of us has to fulfill the laws of labor. Well, it's very interesting what the spirits tell us, of course. And they say, from physical labor, perhaps, but not from the obligation to render themselves useful according to their means and to perfect their own and others' intelligence, which is also labor. Wow. And that's just a part of the answer. So we see that when much is given to someone, especially in a physical sense, it's almost, we can derive an understanding from this answer that there's even more responsibility. So that saying that to whom much is given, more is asked of. We have more responsibility. Can we imagine that we have the responsibility not only to perfect our own intelligence, but also others' intelligence? Because that is labor, the spirits tell us. To help one another is labor. And we go on towards the end of the answer they give, and they said, the spirits answer like this: their obligation to be useful to their fellow creatures is all the greater. It is a portion they have received in advance that allows them more free time to do good. More responsibility, dear friends. More responsibility for those of us who have been given more. Something for us to really reflect about. Because each one of us can give and assist and labor in our own ways. This isn't a way for us or for the spirits to say, well, if you are poor and impoverished, you don't have to be charitable, you don't have to give to others. Each one of us has to fulfill this law of labor, and each one of us has our own ability to give and to assist others in our own way to which we are capable of. But the spirits are merely reflecting and sharing with us that for those who have been given much, they have much more responsibility. Something for us to think about, dear friends. If we find ourselves in this position, because even oftentimes we have much material wealth, although we ourselves do not have that perspective. So let us reflect that if we are comfortable, the responsibility we have, as the spirits say, to perfect their own, which is our own, and others' intelligences, which is also labor, and our obligation to be useful to our fellow creatures is all the greater. So, dear friends, until next week, let us reflect on the words from the spirits in the Spirit's book. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find the CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
Welcome to our Yes, Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and Spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. In the next 4 programs, our topic will be love, and we will answer each Saturday one question on how to teach our children about love and how to act in a loving way. So here's today's question. How can I teach my child about love? The best way to teach children about love is by example. It starts by showing how much we love them. Children need to be assured that they are important in someone's life and hear us saying we love them. When children live in an environment which is not nurturing and that they do not feel loved, they may feel sad, become depressed, unmotivated, hostile, guilty, and have low self-esteem. Plus, it will affect their relationship with others. How can we expect a child to show love or act in a loving way if he has not experienced it? If your child is showing any of this behavior, ask yourself and your child if he feels loved, appreciated, and secure. Children experience love at first through feelings. It is an emotion and somewhat egocentric. It is all about how they feel in relation to something they have or someone close to them. They love their mom, their dad, their friends, their toys and pets. But when they say, "I love it," they really mean, "I strongly like it." In this situation, they are practicing the first stage of love because when they strongly like something or someone, they care about it or care about him. When a parent is teaching their children about love, it is very important to reflect on their understanding about love and how they show love towards their children. Sadly, many parents give to their children mixed messages about love. They say they love their children, but their actions show the opposite. When they yell, when they are being aggressive and disrespectful to their own children. After acting that way and feeling guilty, parents then use the word love as an excuse or as an apology for their behavior, saying, "I am sorry, son, that I hurt you and treat you badly, but I love you." The lesson that we are teaching our children is that it is okay to hurt or be mean to someone, and all we have to do in the end is just say, "I love you," and everything will be okay, even though the actions do not show love. Dear listeners, love is a commitment and should go beyond words. Our actions and how we interact with others should be an expression of love. This is the best way to show and teach children about love. It is very common to see parents or caregivers to use the well-known tough love policy to teach children about love. And we need to be really careful with that. Tough love may cause more harm than good in many cases. It is used to justify an authoritarian parenting style being far from an expression of love. Think of a teenager who is already troubled and suffering, and depending on the intensity of the tough love inflicted on him, it may increase his anger, more pain, and have serious consequences in the future, leading even to suicide. So, more than tough love, what children really, really need is true love. Remember, Kardec Radio listeners, love is good. Love is patient. Love is kind. You can still discipline and be firm to your child when needed, but in a loving way. We forget that life teaches all of us wonderful lessons with the universal law of natural consequences. And life can be really tough sometimes. As it is explained in chapter 15 of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, Paul the Apostle defines true love by showing that it doesn't consist only in doing good deeds, but contains within itself all the higher qualities of the heart, particularly kindness and generosity toward our fellow human beings. Thanks for listening to Yes. Until next week, when we'll continue talking about love.
Good morning, dear Kardec radio listeners, and welcome to one more program of God at Home. I am Raul Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. Today's lesson is from the book Jesus in the Home, entitled A Parable Retold, by the Spirit Neo Lúcio and psychographed by Chico Xavier.
The parable of the Good Samaritan is enshrined in our culture as a perfect illustration of the commandment, do unto others as you would like others do unto you. And yet, in today's story, Jesus will retell this parable to bring out an important point that is often overlooked.
After the parable of the Good Samaritan, that night at Simon's house, Thaddeus was genuinely interested in the subject and asked the Master to go into greater depth about the lesson. Jesus was willing as usual and began.
An ill man, grimacing in pain, was lying on the ground at the gates of a large city. He was being watched by a small group of unlearned and indifferent people.
A young, generous Roman sped by in his chariot and tossed 2 silver coins at the man, but an ill-mannered street urchin ran off with them.
Soon after, a venerable scribe of the law passed by. He said that he had important matters to take care of, but he promised to send authorities to help the nameless beggar.
Almost immediately, a priest came parading by. He threw the homeless traveler a gesture of blessing, and stating that the worship of the Supreme Lord awaited him, he exhorted the people to take the sick man in and feed him.
After him, a respectable lady suddenly came on the scene. The poor man made a moving plea, but the noble matron, bemoaning her hole as a woman, asked if there weren't any men around who might help the sick man.
Minutes afterwards, a great judge came along the same stretch of public road, and alleging that he would need evidence proving that the wretch was not in fact some common fiend, he quickly left under the pretext that the opportunity did not behoove him.
After a few moments more, a dealer in the money bags appeared, who sympathetically asserted his lack of time and gave 20 coins to a kind-looking man so that the matter of assistance might be resolved. But the extempore agent was really an escaped convict and ran off with the money without rendering the aid he had promised.
The sick man writhed and sweat in pain, groveling in the dust, when along came an old publican, regarded as being a low life because he didn't worship the Lord according to the rules of the Pharisees. To everyone's shock and amazement, he went up to the poor man, spoke a few words of encouragement and kindness to him, and helped him up. Supporting him with his own strength, he led him to a trustworthy inn, gave him the medicine he needed, and shared the small amount of money he had on him. Then he returned to his journey, continuing on his way with peace of mind.
In your opinion, who performed a true act of charity? Of course, the publican. And what person of the story do you think represents you better? The busy Roman, the divine worshipper, the doubtful judge, or simply the sick man? In the light of this wonderful story, think about all the times when you received help from a stranger and try to put one of these simple acts of charity into action.
Extend your hand to one who has fallen. Say a kind word to someone else. Smile at the lonely person, offering him brotherhood. Give a friend a flower. Make someone sad smile. Surround an unfortunate with tenderness. There are coins of love that are worth more than treasures in the bank when used at the right moment and with kindness. Compete for the honor of building a better world and a happier society.
Dear listener, we hope that all these segments, including the interview with Dr. Narvin Diti and the teachings we shared from the Spiritist books, have helped you. There is a lot more. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a suggestion, don't hesitate to contact us at kardecradio.com contact form. If not, directly to the email kardec@kardecradio.com, and we'll be happy to address them. By the way, we are very happy for those who have been sharing their insights and are excited about the Kardec Radio stamp. There's a lot for all of us to do in this world, and to share with you the final moments. It's a prayer in the Gospel according to Spiritism that immigrant parents can do and help them. Chapter 28, and it's during life's afflictions, item 26. Let us pray. Almighty God, who sees our misery, deign to listen favorably to the pleas we send you at this moment. If our request is inappropriate, forgive us. If it is just and useful in your sight, may the good spirit who carry out your will come to our aid for its fulfillment. Whatever may come our way, dear God, may our will be done, your will be done. If our desires are not heeded, it is because it's within your designs to test us and submit ourselves without complaint. Enable me not to become discouraged by this, and may neither our faith or nor our resignation be shaken. And we pray at this moment that all parents, and especially immigrant parents, feel empowered in their mission, in their challenges, finding the beautiful new that is ahead of them, knowing that God awaits a new self, a new person inside of all of us. And so be it. Dear listener, we are much grateful to the whole Kardec Radio team and everyone who listens to us in more than 60 plus countries in the world. May you come back next week as we dedicate this month to Kardec, empowering us and especially our Spiritist communities. It's going to be all about the spiritual dimensions of the Spiritist Center. There's a lot to share, and you can call us live at 858-769-4705. May God bless us all, always.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.